The things you learn about your buddies. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Listography. Joe here with Jason and Kramzer. As always, it's Friday. We got lists to do. Today, we're counting down our favorite albums of the year 2005. Not too much going on in 2005. I was in college, so I wasn't really paying too much attention to music at the time, which was fine. Nothing crazy was happening, really. The big things of 2005, Ray Charles posthumously won 5 Grammy Awards at the 47th Grammys, I guess. I wrote that down. I don't know if that's true or not. I have no concept of the Grammys at all. Emancipation of Mimi was the big album of the year. Mariah Carey's big comeback. Sold 10 plus million albums worldwide. And the lead single, We Belong Together, was number 1 for 14 weeks, which was the most of the whole decade. So Mariah Carey back with a vengeance. You had Carrie Underwood winning American Idol, one of the few American Idol winners that people still care about. Really one of like 2. You had Destiny's Child breaking up, Beyonce going solo, which would work out well for her. Also, Blink-182 broke up, which I don't think anyone really cared about. Pink Floyd briefly reunited for some gigs. I saw Dream Theater and Megadeth on Gigantor. That was pretty much the only musical thing I did in 2005. Some interesting tech-related things. YouTube started the channel that we are on right now. It gives us our wonderful audience every week, every day. Love you, YouTube. Also, Guitar Hero debuted, which I know nobody plays it now, but it was huge for a while back in late 2000s. I played that in Rock Band all the time. Fun stuff. But the most important thing of the entire year was probably when Kanye West says George Bush doesn't care about black people at the Hurricane Katrina. I don't even know what it was, pledge drive. It was all over television. I think he was with Mike Myers at the time, and that was just hilarious. One of the more just hilarious things that I can remember seeing on TV live. Just in shock. Hilarious, though. Great work by Kanye there. Really kind of, Kanye's been being crazy for 15 years now, so got to give it up for Kanye. One other note, the largest concert since Live Aid 85 took place January 22nd for the tsunami relief. So that was a pretty big deal. That was in Britain, I believe. Whole bunch of artists, bands, great stuff coming together to raise money for charity, as bands tend to do. Anything else in 2005? Not a lot was going on in the world, I don't think. George Bush, Iraq War, but I was in college, so I didn't care about any of that.
I can't really think of too much going on in 2005. That was the year I moved to Chicago. Missed you boys a lot. But yeah, I don't remember like going to, obviously I was in a different city than you guys, but I don't really remember going to shows with you or anything. And I lived in the dorm that year, so like I could barely even like really play guitar or like was partying too much. So, but I did listen to a ton of music. But yeah, 2005 was I do remember driving around Oakland and Pittsburgh with Joe, with you and Brian, and we were really blasting X and Y when it came out by Coldplay. And that was the start of my Coldplay hatred, even though I don't hate that album. It's like it's the track in the wrong direction. And then, yeah.
So 2005, I really, really love this year. It's the beginning of another sort of interesting wrinkle in this whole series. This is the year that I started tracking everything I listened to and making lists. So from this point on, it's kind of like this extra layer of interest that I have in my lists where I can actually see how my tastes have changed and evolved and how my thoughts have maybe changed about certain albums. But like I alluded to in another video, this is one of my favorite years of all time. I'm thinking maybe like my third favorite. The top 5 isn't really comparable to a lot of years like in the 70s, but the strength of this year is just the depth. There are so many albums that I really like a lot, probably like 50 that were close to making my top 5. Just a really ridiculous year in terms of depth. So I guess if you guys are ready, I'll get into my list. All right, for the ones that just missed, it's a fairly long list of albums, and just about every one of these that I mention in any other year would be a shoo-in for the top 5. Nashville by Josh Rouse, Descended Like Vultures by Rogue Wave, Come On Feel the Illinois by Sufjan Stevens, Road to Ruin by Supergrass, Man Made by Teenage Fan Club, Andrew Bird and the Mysterious Production of Eggs, Blinking Lights and Other Revelations by Eels, Extraordinary Machine by Fiona Apple, Cole's Corner by Richard Hawley, Clap Your Hands Say Yeah, self-titled album, Howl by Black Rebel Motorcycle Club, The Sunlandic Twins by Of Montreal, Idols of Exile by Jason Collette, Iron Flowers by Gray DeLisle. Super deep year. But the 5 that it comes down to are these ones. I've got I'm Wide Awake, It's Morning by Bright Eyes. This was the year that they released 2 albums simultaneously, this one and Digital Ash in a Digital Urn, which I also like, but I think this is clearly the better record. I've also got Transistor Radio by M. Ward. I've got Z by My Morning Jacket. So I've got the Monsters of Folk all represented individually here. I've got...
Oh, yeah. Very cool, yeah.
Sorry to cut in and interrupt, but it finally happened. It was bound to eventually. I screwed up a date, so this is a correction. As I said, 2005 was the year that I started making lists. So when I was going back and looking at the year, I was relying heavily on my list instead of the internet, as I have been. So that's where the mistake came from. I had Aha Shake Heartbreak by Kings of Leon as a 2005 album because it was released in the United States in 2005, but it came out in 2004 in the UK. So I have to come on here and tell you that I am replacing Aha Shake Heartbreak in this video with what would have been my number 6, which is Gimme Fiction by Spoon, and letting you know that Aha Shake Heartbreak would have likely been in my 2004 list, probably would have bumped Ben Queller off. So yeah, that's my mistake. Lesson learned. I won't rely so much on my old lists. I'll be sure to check the dates from here on out. But yeah, back to the video. But my winner for 2005, one of my favorite years, and the record that outdoes all of those for me is Pixel Revolt by John Vanderslice. So this record, on its surface, just a really good, enjoyable indie pop record, kind of Baroque in places. There's some nice electric piano in places, nice string arrangements, a little bit of like glitchy, as Joe would call it, beeps and bloops, some electronic stuff happening in this record. But if you go a layer deeper than that, the lyrics on this are just really interesting. There's a handful of songs on here that are explicitly referencing 9/11 and the immediate aftermath of 9/11. Kind of makes it feel a little bit like a concept album, but it's not really. There's also all these other songs with really interesting subject matter. There's one song about this guy losing his girlfriend's pet rabbit, and there's a song about detectives. There's all these sort of like fibers that make you think maybe these songs are connected. It's just really interesting how it works together. I feel like if this record was more popular, it might be one of those records that had like a lot of think pieces written about it. There's just a lot of depth. It's a real interesting record, I think. And beyond that, it's just a good listen. It's good songs, good melodies, good production. John Vanderslice, of course, owns Tiny Telephone, the recording studios in the Bay Area. huge proponent of analog recording. Every band that records in his studios is required to record to tape. So I love John Vanderslice. I think he's a genius, and I think this record is his masterpiece.
He's a tape Nazi, analog Nazi.
Until the quarantine. Apparently he's started recording digitally during this lockdown, and I guess he's loving it.
I have a blind spot for John Vanderslice, but I knew he was going to be pretty prominent for your decade here. So I've kind of been trickling in some songs in my regular listening, and I like it enough, but I haven't spent that much time with it and don't like what I've heard quite. Well, it's not blowing me away. So won't be any JVS on my list this decade. 2005, pretty good year for me. Probably the weakest one so far going through the 2000s since 2000. I only have 2 5-star albums, but I got a lot of 4s and 4.5s. The ones that didn't make my top 5, Cold Roses, I think Jason's true number 1 before the cancellation of Ryan Adams. Broken Social Scene, Clap Your Hands, Say Yeah as well. I also have the debut of LCD Sound System, and Sleater-Kinney with The Woods. I listened to twice this week, and kind of one of those artists where this exercise of going through albums of the year, I didn't really know that I liked as much that I did. And so I've got 6 left for 5 spots. My runner-up, the other 5-star album that didn't win, is Z, My Morning Jacket. I've also got Before the Dawn Heals Us by M83. And With Teeth by 9 Inch Nails. I think an incredibly underrated 9 Inch Nails record. The last nominated spot, really tight, and it was like something I decided on literally just a couple hours ago. It is going to be Silent Alarm by Block Party. The one that just missed the number 6 spot is Language, Sex, Violence, Other by Stereophonics. Just a great rock record. Stereophonics, a band that never really took off in the US, but I feel like probably could have, should have, like especially during like the big popularity of the Strokes and all of you, like they're kind of like more of an old school straight up rock act that could have toured with these bands and Kings of Leon and stuff, but never really got popular in the States. My winner, a runaway winner, even though I have another 5-star album, is Feels by Animal Collective. I talked last year about one of their runner-up albums. If you don't know Animal Collective, they're incredibly hard to describe what they sound like. It's like a big, chaotic, controlled circus of trippiness and like childlike wonder. Circus is the right word, I guess, but this album is beautiful. Did You See the Words? Grass, Purple Bottle, Bees, Banshee Beat, Daffy Duck, all these amazing songs. It's a big collective unit. The sound is very modern. It's not as technical as I think people think they are. It's not as electronic. If you ever seen them live, they don't do a lot of electronic stuff, but it's also very percussive heavy. There's just a lot of just driving deep into the pulse, like just thunderous, like almost like marching band beats. Really hard to describe, but their music is kind of operatic and incredibly intimate at the same time. Some of just amazing vocals that can be just really just bizarre and immature with the screeching and the crying and the screaming, but everything is incredibly melodic, really perky, a lot of incredibly just like distorted reverb and layered echoed guitars. They just have a really unique, lush layering of sound to all of their stuff that, I'm really struggling to describe it because you just got to hear it. It's unlike, I don't know, Jason, can you help me out with a description of what Animal Collective sounds like at all?
It's a little psychedelic. I don't think that's a word that you used, but I think there's, swirling.
Yes, it's a big whirlwind of psychedelic trip, like poetry. It's awesome. It's incredible. It's like every song is just like a big like spirit journey almost. You're deep into your mind and your heart at the same time. A really incredible experience. This is my favorite Animal Collective album, not to spoil a potential Animal Collective listography, but they might not be done winning this some years of this decade, maybe not even by a long shot. So it is one of my favorite albums of all time. It is Feels by Animal Collective, an absolutely amazing album. And like I said, a lot of talk in the comments lately about star ratings and all this. And this out, like, I don't want to discredit this year because I only have 2 5-stars. So many 4s and 4.5s, and 4s and 4.5s are great. Like I said, 04, one of my favorite years of all time. This is one of Jason's favorite years, and it really, I think, is attributed to the volume and the depth. Like when you get to like your 50 favorite album of 1977, you know, you're into like Bad Company territory and stuff that I think is like good, but nowhere near as good as like where that around that list is for me in like these years. The top of the 70s lists, I think, are usually better than this decade, but the volume and just the length of really good is much deeper. So yeah, 2005, not up in my all-time years, but this is a really good year for me.
And here's Joe to disagree with everything you just said, Kramzer. Now, I'm not going to get into comparing the 70s. I can't say for me anymore. I say it too much. Someone called me out in the comments. So for 2005 is a pretty good year. But again, all these 2000 years, it's the exact same albums I liked that year. Literally nothing has come along in the time since that has even made, I mean, my top 10, only one artist that I recently discovered, Kate Bush, broke into the top 10 this year. Of course, Ariel on my top 10, but not the top 5. Doesn't break in. A couple other ones that right on the cusp. You have The Bravery with The Bravery Out of Exile by Audio Slave, Mesmerized by System of a Down, The Darkness with One Way Ticket to Hell and Back. A lot of disappointing albums for me that didn't quite live up to the past releases, especially with The Darkness, Coldplay with X and Y, obviously a little step down. Doves with Some Cities, a bit of a step down. Weezer with Make Believe, big step down. I don't know. It's a fine year. My top 5, though, remain unchanged as they were in 2005. Coming in as a runner-up, I got Lullabies to Paralyze by Queens of the Stone Age, which is very good, but without Nick Oliveri, kind of loses some of that scream, that raw power that I really like. So that's gone. He got kicked out of the band because he was a creep, and sucks because they were my favorite band up until this point, pretty much. You got Z by My Morning Jacket, which is great. I always used to complain about the production because I thought it was too watery and echoey, but it's still a great album. And just the songwriting is awesome. I really like the live versions on Okonos or whatever. You know, another band that's, well, they disappoint me later, but for now, they're not disappointing me. I got Francis the Mute from the Mars Volta, which is probably my favorite Mars Volta album. Just some of the guitar tones they use. Well, I was listening to it a lot this week, and I thought about putting it number 1, but there's just so much like dead air on this album. Like there's amazing, just mind-blowing Santana meets Zeppelin meets At the Drive-In parts, and then there's like 12 minutes of birds chirping and just like ambient. And I can't do it. I just can't do it. I love the album though. Francis the Mute, great album. I guess my other runner-up is going to be, let's go with City of Evil from Avenged Sevenfold. I've always liked this album a lot. It's sort of tongue-in-cheek metal a little bit, you know, closer to Iron Maiden and Judas Priest than death metal or scream metal or anything like that. But great guitar work, kind of Guns N' Roses-y style, a little more flash though. And not making my list, Kramzer's pick for my number 1, Late Registration by Kanye West. I like it a lot. It was just off the list, but not quite as good as The College Dropout. So my winner, again, I'm going back to the well here. Coheed and Cambria, Good Apollo, I'm Burning Star 4, Volume 1, From Fear Through the Eyes of Madness. Great proggy title. The music, this is sort of where a lot of the emo kids that really liked Coheed and Cambria sort of decided they didn't like the band anymore. A lot more classic rock influence on this, a lot of Pink Floyd. There's a hidden track at the very end of the whole album. It's a tribute to Zeppelin called Bronjur. But I mean, this is sort of like Star Wars meets Stranger Than Fiction meets like, I don't even, it's just a bizarre kind of dense story. The thing I think I like about Coheed and Cambria the most is the story that they're telling runs through all these albums. And there's a bunch of like callbacks and themes that reoccur throughout, you know, from their first album to this album. There's little bits and pieces you pick up on that they go back to, sort of as they're telling this dense story. In this one, the person writing the music is also involved in the story. Like it's really bizarre. Like you have to read a comic book basically to figure out what's going on. But the music itself is great. A lot of twin guitars, a lot of big guitar solos. They had some synth in here. Still do a little bit of the pop emo stuff on the Suffering. But my favorite sort of part of the whole thing is the four suite, the Willing Well at the very end. Just four super proggy, 7+ minute songs. Kind of reminds me of Black Sabbath, the way that there's like 10 or 11 like different parts. Tons of great riffs that sort of, it's not just a verse, chorus, bridge song. I love Claudio's voice. I know that's a turnoff for a lot of people, but I think he's a great singer. A little Thin Lizzy with the twin guitar in here. So I love it. It's just a mishmash combination of like all the things I like in life. Still has those epic heroic endings that last like 3 minutes and just gets me amped up. Love it. So, in my opinion, Coheed and Cambria, my probably my favorite. I don't know. It goes back and forth between this and In Keeping Secrets of Silent Earth. I think I like this one a little bit more because it pissed off all the emo kids, and I dig that. I'm always a big fan of that. So my winner, 2005, two-time winner, Coheed and Cambria, and that's it. That's 2005 in a nutshell. I was in college, and apparently my tastes have just not changed at all. I tried. I listened to a whole bunch of other albums, but I just keep going back to the well. I don't know what it is. Maybe I'm immature and I can't grow up, but it's just who I am.
You love ABBA, the most mature band in the world. So.
I do, but they weren't putting out albums in 2005, unfortunately.
Does Ariel really make your top 10 for this year?
Yes, it does. I listened to it a bunch more times. I know it. I mean, it was lower on my list of Kate Bush, but I pretty much like all the albums, And this year, the level of album that it takes to make my top 5 is constantly going down and down and down. So sort of rising tide of albums that may have been lower on my list for the listographies we do are going to start popping into the top 5, especially as we continue. It's all downhill from here for me, pretty much.
Do you consider any of these albums 5-star albums?
I mean, I do, because I really like them. I don't know if I was a reviewer, I don't know if I'd give these 5-star albums, but I like them enough in my personal rankings. But, it's hard for me to rate albums from this period because I've more emotional connection because they occurred when I was growing up. So I don't know, it's tough. It's that divide between, do I straight review this or do I take my own emotions into account? On my list, yeah, they're like right at the bottom of the acceptable range for a 5-star album.
Jason, I would assume all of you listed a lot you would consider 5 stars.
Yeah, all 5 of mine are 5 stars.
Interesting. I would imagine the big album that I don't think any of us had would probably be Illinois by Sufjan, which of like this decade, Sufjan, Iron and Wine, there's a couple more of like artists you'd think that I would like be really all about. Spoon is another one, just kind of middle of the road for me. Don't really blow me away, but you would think Sufjan especially, I like some of his stuff a lot, some of his songs especially, but like I listened to Illinois and I never loved it as much as everyone else did when it came out, and I still don't. So I bet that's going to pop up in a lot of the comments in people's top 5s.
I imagine you're right about that. I'm a little surprised you don't like him as much. Anything else, Kramzer? Anything else to add?
pretty darn good year.
Yeah, it was all right. Anyway, if you like the video, give us a like. Leave your list of top 5, top 10, top 20. I think somebody leaves like a top 50 every once in a while. Keep doing it. We love to see it. We love to read it. I do add some of the suggestions to my list so that in 10 years when we redo all this, I can check them out. So yeah, keep the comments coming. Subscribe if you have not subscribed. Check out the video description for Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Make sure to check out on Monday for our new Monday morning show, Good Music America. Me and Cram will be doing that until Jason can join us when he gets a little less schoolwork on his plate. But it's a little morning show. We get to talk about all sorts of fun stuff happening in the news, recent album reviews, all that good stuff. So check it out if you would. And as always, thanks for watching.